Guys, I'm Dr. Juicy Jill. I am with Dr. Andrea Pennington, best-selling author of The Orgasm Prescription and founder of the new global Real Self-Love movement. I'm also very, very honored to call her my friend and my mentor. And I am super excited to bring to you all the juicy details today about how to create more intimacy in your relationship in today's busy schedule and busy world. So I just wanted to kind of, get your recommendations, how you approach creating intimacy in a relationship, whether it's if you're meeting with one person, a couple. What is your approach to that?
Well, first, thank you for having me on with you. This is exciting for this new venture you're on. You know what I'm going to say already. Every intimate relationship that we have really starts with us and becoming really intimate with ourselves. And I don't just mean in the sensual or sexual way. I mean really coming to know who you are, know what you value, what you stand for, what you like, and what you really see yourself bringing to the world. And once you're really in touch with your real self and what lights you up, then you can bring that real self into every relationship. So literally the relationship with your children, with your beloved, with your coworkers, with the other mommies that you hang out with. When we really know ourselves and we come from that authentic place, that is what opens up the door to this really deep intimacy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I could just go on and on with your resume and all the amazing things that you've done with your TED Talk, this real self-love movement is truly amazing. And exactly what you said, getting to know yourself, because it is what you're bringing to the relationship. We can't expect someone else to fill that hole in us. And we kind of need the same thing from somebody else that we're going to be in a relationship with, for them to be constantly working on themselves as well.
Yeah, I think what you just said is like, we could have a whole show on just that one concept that you just mentioned, that sometimes, depending on where you grew up in the world and what era, sometimes women look at relationships as if we're going to meet this beloved who will complete us, who will fulfill our livelihood. And that's, for most people, it's just not the case. It's like having a beautiful, deep relationship with someone. That should be the icing on the cake for you already being a whole and fulfilled person as just you. Now, I'm not saying that we don't need, our partners. I'm saying that that first thing is just understanding that as a spiritual being, you're already whole. You're not lacking anything. But as a human being, we do better when we're in these interdependent relationships. But if both of us are coming to this union as whole people who are not looking to be completed, who are not dependent on this other person to provide our happiness or our fulfillment, then we're so much more powerful as a power couple to actually co-create and manifest a beautiful, juicy, and delicious life. And then most importantly, then we can model that for our children. So they too are growing up with this sense of competency and empowerment and interdependence rather than codependence.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, one of the things that, people kind of, they don't truly understand intimacy. And it doesn't necessarily mean, all of this, crazy sex. That can be fun. Yes. But, to have even that connection, there needs to be that initial intimacy, and even just communicating with your partner. And one of the apps that, we're in such a society that, we're very app related. Is that showing up on your screen for the agenda?
I don't see an agenda yet. Not yet.
Pop it in there.
Ooh, I see my name now. I got a
Okay.
funky lower third graphic with my name on it. Even matches my shirt, y'all.
I knew you'd like that color. That's why I wanted to match you too.
Oh, I thank you.
But we're in such a tech world that, if there's an app for it, and so one of the apps that I tend to recommend for people is the Pillow app, and I don't know if you've kind of looked at that at all, and it's really more intimacy games, and
Yes. I love Pillow. I love it. I actually met Kate Moyle, one of the co-founders, last year. Oh my gosh, actually, I think it's now been over a year and a half ago, when I came out with the orgasm prescription for women. And we did a book signing in London. And I love that the Pillow app is using technology, which, as you know, can sometimes put distance between couples, right? Like we go to dinner and everyone's on their phone, or they're taking pictures of their meal instead of looking deeply and longingly into their partner's eyes. And unfortunately, it creates more distance, especially when you lose all of the nuance and the subtle hints in text messaging. So yeah, I love the Pillow app. In fact, you will, in the coming months, I think you'll be hearing my voice in one of the scenarios. But it's cool, right? Like the Pillow app, because you've got all these little scenarios, plus you've got these exercises that you read it or you listen to it and then you put it away. It's not like technology is part of your whole intimacy thing, but it really brings us back together and back to connecting on a real level, which, as you know, I think people love to use technology for the fantasy, for the escapism, to create something that's new and titillating. But sometimes if you haven't connected with your beloved in a long time, they can be the new titillation in your world if you choose to really go deep. And I think that's the other piece I would bring up is it's a choice. You can take the easy road as a human, which, we give in to complacency. We give in to, oh, it's the same old same. We get into the same old routine. The kids are in bed. Now we do this. Or we can choose to instigate and add in a little bit of spice or fun.
So what's your recommendation? Because I can actually see a couple, how is that going to happen? How am I going to create that? Is it scheduling, working on an app, having a conversation, scheduling a meeting once a week for an hour to talk about this? What's kind of your approach?
One of the things that I learned the most in all of this research is, since we know that actual erotic stuff happens in the brain and orgasm happens in the brain, we need to do everything in our power to turn it on. And one of the biggest complaints for people in long-term relationships, and definitely married couples, is that they lose that spark. They lose that sense of attraction that just pulls them in and makes them just want to jump each other's bones. But we can trick or game the system. We can get the brain to start thinking that our partner is that new sexy thing. So rather than cheating or getting involved in, some new shiny sexy hunk, you can start to turn that on with your partner. So what I would recommend is, if you are working not in the same house or something, utilize that away time to start piquing that sense of curiosity. So rather than just thinking, oh yeah, I know where my partner is and I know what I'm doing, like insert a little bit of intrigue, like send a little text message or send a little suggestive picture. I'm not talking about you know what I'm saying?
I understand.
Just something that's a little bit of a hint that would kind of throw them off, because novelty is something that we can create. We don't have to go out and seek it out. And once you do that, then the brain starts to say, oh, wait, I thought I already knew what was happening, but this is a whole new thing. And that actually turns on the erotic energy for most people. So if you're willing to just become a little more playful, to become a little more intriguing, it's a great way to start reinvigorating or adding that spark back into your relationship.
Okay, that's great. That's great. Now, one question that I have been asked, and you are the expert in this, is, it's a common conversation that couples have with their friends, guys have with their friends, girls have with their friends. There's this whole comparison of, how often should we be having sex? What's the prescription for that? And I know that that's something that you talk about in this book. So, and kind of what's the theory or the reasoning behind it?
Yeah, well, okay, so there's two things. You just asked how often should one have intercourse or sex, whatever you want to define as sex, which we probably should define it, right? Because with technology, there's a whole new definition of sex, right? But you just asked, so how often should we have sex? But that book was written to educate us about how often we should experience orgasm.
Yes,
so,
thank you for correcting me.
Because, hey, you don't necessarily have to have sex to experience orgasm. You know, I write in the book that there are people who have learned how to, with their breathing, really get in touch with the sensual energy. And there are people who can think off, you know, they call it a thinking orgasm or a breathing orgasm. So I think for most of us, at least for most women who have kids or we have a busy life, we may not prioritize sex anymore. And I would say you need to have it as much as is needed for you, because it's got to be personalized, to feel that sense of bonded and connectedness, but also the sense of vitality. If we're talking about how many orgasms, as you know, the big controversy came out when I went on Dr. Oz and said that I wanted my patients to have 3 orgasms a week. Now, the 3 orgasms was just really a way for us to understand if there was something wrong. Because if you weren't getting up to 3, then that could be a clue that maybe something internally was wrong with your blood pressure or with your blood sugar, or like you're the expert in hormones. If we don't have the internal chemistry working right, we may not even feel excited. And yes, it's true, we may not actually get to that orgasmic release. But when people started emailing and calling me and they're saying, I don't have high blood pressure, I don't have diabetes, but I'm still not having 3 orgasms. What do you say about that? Then that's when we started to really look within. And what was disturbing to me was a lot of women were saying, I don't have time for all that. It takes me too long to get to the climax. So I'd rather just either fake it or allow my partner to get there and then we're done. And that bothered me, because when we're not allowing that sensual energy to flow, when we're not giving ourselves permission to receive pleasure, no matter how long it takes, then we start to rob ourselves of that natural vitality. Now, as you know, my background includes traditional Chinese medicine and acupuncture. And I know that you sent me a really lovely picture of you getting acupuncture. So you know about these, the flow of energy, right? So yes. If we have this natural energy that flows through us, not just sexual energy, but every energy system that takes care of our whole body and our mind and our vitality, if we block some of it or stifle it or just ignore it, then it's going to affect other places down the line. And so when a woman is denying herself the right to pleasure and orgasm, my experience shows that she will typically experience problems in other parts of her life. Because if you start blocking energy, it creates tension. It creates backups, which could be tension in the relationship. It could make her more crabby. You know the chemistry. The more orgasms we have, we release oxytocin, which makes us more bonded and loving with our partners and our children. It lowers blood pressure. It actually cures headaches. So for the women who have used, I have a headache as an excuse, stop that. You might as well get the pleasure of it. And then, again, enjoy that bondedness with your partner. Because without it, then our marriages and our relationships just become sort of drudgery.
Yeah. It's funny that you brought up the acupuncture and the blockage, because my first experience with acupuncture was for headaches, for migraines. And I didn't really know anything about it. I just was kind of at my wit's end. And I remember going in for it, and, they checked my pulse and my tongue and all of that. And I went away from that experience without a headache. So that was great. But that next week, I he didn't really tell me what I didn't know about the energy movement and everything. And that next week, I was very awakened in every sense of the word. So whatever block I had, it created some flow. And so when I went back the next week, I just was a little bit, shy about it. And I said, what did you do? Because I kind of experienced this. Is that normal? And they said, oh, yes. So, that blockage is amazing. So, and thank you again for correcting me with regard to sex and orgasm and connection, because
what do you say? I mean, you're the hormone doctor. What do you say to women who come in and they're kind of like, well, no, I just don't really have sex that often anymore. I mean, why do I even bother? My kids are already grown. So, I mean, what do you say? I know you don't let people just say, oh, okay, sex doesn't matter anymore.
No, no, not at all. I know some doctors will do that. You've told me about that. And so, I really try to, it's even with other females talking about their sex life or their sex drive. You would think that being a female myself, they would feel a little bit comfortable, but there's such kind of taboo about talking about it. And so I kind of see this initial reaction of like, oh no, are we talking about this? Or they'll say, oh, it's fine. And then I actually have to ask the targeted questions. Is it painful? Are you dry? Are you not juicy? Do you, and why don't you want to have it? Because if they just say, well, I just don't have my drive. Well, why? And it could be because, one, they are dry and they're embarrassed about it and they don't want to talk to their partner about it. Could be that it's painful because of that as well. So, it could be that they just don't feel sexy because they have this weight gain and they feel kind of depressed and they were put on antidepressants instead of having their hormones optimized. And so it's like this whole cycle. If they don't feel good up here, they don't feel good in their body, and then they don't feel that connection. And there's, that whole shame around talking about with your partner, if you're having an issue because you feel, like maybe they won't think that you're sexy anymore. Then if you're not having that communication with them, then they're thinking that they're not turning you on. So I have the whole, roundabout conversation, as far as what exactly is the issue. And certainly time is a huge one. So.
Yeah. But and
keeping that connection. So.
Yeah, but wouldn't it be awful to just accept that? I think that's the thing that bothered me so much. I mean, for me, I was doing sex education, but only with my clients. I never anticipated publishing this book and being out there as a visible sex educator. But when I started getting so many people, so many women telling me that they had just shut down, they're like, oh, well, isn't this how it is for everyone? Like, oh yeah, I saw my mom go through the change, and then I never heard her and my dad getting frisky anymore. And I'm like, no, it doesn't have to be that way. Like, we can literally enjoy sensuality and our intimate relationships well into our 8th decade of life. Why would you settle for being in your mid 40s or 50s and just say, oh yeah, for the next 40 years, I could do without? And I'm like, no, because when you see a woman who's really in her vitality, and that's, I don't know about you, but for me, there's something magical that does happen when you hit 40, where you do feel like you got a little more confidence, your kids are at a good age, and you realize, I just got to love me, and I just got to do who I really am. I got to do me. And then it's like, why shouldn't I unleash all of my sensuality with my beloved and really feel what it feels like to be a whole, vibrant, sensual woman? I'm not saying that you got to go out there and become a cougar and go pounce on a man if you're single, but I'm just saying, honoring the way that the divine created women and men. I mean, we were meant to have this vital energy flowing through us, and there's nothing more sacred and spiritual than having that divine connection with your beloved, where you're free to truly be yourself, to pour love into them and to receive that. So why would you want to just say, well, isn't it? Meh. Yeah. So I'm that's why I'm so glad to partner up with you to bring some of this education to the world, because it affects everything. And when you're turned on as a woman, it affects everything. Your ability to parent, your creativity at solving problems, your ability to just kind of brush things off and not taking everything so personally. Like, we become more resilient the more we honor our divine sensuality.
Yeah.
So there it is.
Well, and I think, I think you touched on something, as far as like with your children and really showing your true authentic self. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, for some reason you chimed out there a second. But I think, there is this notion that like, oh, well, I'm a mom. I can't, have sex anymore. And we have to wait till the kids are gone. And I think you're truly, teaching, I mean, you're not having sex in front of them, obviously, but that whole vitality that you have, it really is showing them a different way of living. And you're ultimately teaching your children how their future relationships should look. Because if they see that you're a cold in your relationships, you're never, holding hands or, the forehead kisses, those kind of just like nice things, those you're teaching your children those things. And when you have that vibrant energy, that juiciness within, that's why I like that word, it does affect you from within. It makes you laugh and giggle and just be more vibrant, and it really, and be more present with not just your beloved, but with your children, with anything you're doing. I think that was amazing what you said. And the other thing that I, think that kind of ties in with, and I'm super happy to be a part of with you, is this real self-love movement. And I absolutely agree that as you, age, I think we just get better. And I think the fact that women are coming together and sharing their challenges and their desires and their dreams and moving forward with that, I think that's an amazing thing, because I think, at least for me, hearing your story is what helped unleash me from my prison. And now I want to shout it from the rooftops, and I want to enable women to truly live their true authentic selves and lives. So if you want to speak about the real self-love movement, I would love to hear about that and how we can find out more.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm so grateful that you are a part of the Real Self-Love movement as one of our Real Self-Love leaders. Basically, it started, as you know, from my own journey and my experience not loving myself. I mean, dealing with, get some water there. Tea. When I dealt with depression and anxiety for literally 2 decades, and got to the point, like so many people, it's such a story that everyone's heard. You climb that success ladder, get to the top of the mountain only to realize, oh, wait, I'm at the wrong mountaintop. But I was so miserable that I just literally didn't even want my life to go on. And the spiritual awakening that allowed me to really learn who I am and love who I am is what inspires me now to want everyone to experience that. Now, they don't necessarily have to have a spiritual awakening, but it's a reprogramming. For so many of us, especially women in America, for example, if you've been brought up around certain images in the media, or even just like you were talking about, we model for our children what is good and right for us as adults. And so if you grew up in a family or a household that didn't value and lift up moms, for example, or women, then you might have this belief that, oh yeah, I'm supposed to serve my partner or serve others and never think about me. And unfortunately, that can perpetuate depression and anxiety. I'm not talking about, situational depression or these things, but for those people that I've met who don't love themselves, it causes so much havoc, because then that feeling of not feeling good enough typically creates so much pain that we want to get rid of the pain. And then in my experience, when I had my wellness center, one of the things that I saw was eating disorders, addiction, binge eating, gambling, relationship hopping. It was as if people were always searching for that external source of love and acceptance. And I knew what that felt like. I didn't have any of the addiction things except for being addicted to kind of achieving. It was this pattern of like, if I could get just the right job and the right accolades and the right, then I'll be okay. And it just never happened. I was never okay. And so I know that I've been willing to share my story, which, as you said, that's one of the things that linked us last year. And I felt like the more people hear of other people besides me, just other stories of people who've learned to love themselves, even when we are the weirdo or the misfit of our family. The benefit of being able to come together as a community gives us more confidence, because in my case, I did things when I really stood up for who I am that there are family members that are like, what are you doing? Like, and I think that keeps a lot of people afraid. You know, they're afraid to leave a job or their university or their marriage because, oh, what are people going to think? I'm going to be thought of as a failure. You know, my dad's never going to accept me, or my mom's going to, whatever. But if we could create a global community where we get together with social media like Facebook, or we get together in person for the Real Self-Love Days, then people can realize you're part of a global family. And even if your family of origin didn't quite get you or accept you, it's okay. You can still strike out and really be who you really are and be loved and be accepted. And so part of the Real Self-Love movement includes masterclasses, which I know you're going to be co-hosting a masterclass with me, and some of the other wonderful authors that are in that book behind Dr. Juicy Jill. She's a co-author in the book Time to Rise. Many of the co-authors there, and my partner in craziness, Helena Phillipson. She and I are co-hosting Real Self-Love Days in person so that people can come and get that fun and that nourishment and that bonding and that inspiration. So thank you for letting me share about that. If you want information, you can visit realself.love. Join the movement totally for free. You can get guided meditations and all sorts of little downloads. And we also have a Real Self-Love community here on Facebook. So I think I'll type in the group.
I'll go ahead. I'll type in all the links and everything.
Fabulous.
So people can find out where to get the book, the orgasm prescription, also become part of the Real Self-Love movement. I'll also put where to look at all of your accolades and actually get motivation from all that you've done.
Thank you.
Well, are there any parting thoughts or comments or anything like that? Anything that you
I just
desire to get out?
just sincere gratitude, you know, for you being also willing to share your story, sharing your story in Time to Rise, and coming on radio shows with me, and now hosting your own show. That's a big deal. You know, like we've talked about it before, how for some doctors in America, we were born to think, oh, you can't show your vulnerable side. You can't share your truth. What will people think? And so I just want to honor you for that, because you're helping other women and men recognize that there's actual strength and there's power in our vulnerability. And that is what opens the doorway to real, deep, and lasting intimacy. So thank you for all that you're doing.
Well, thank you. It truly was an honor and a pleasure to have you on here. And I know
I'm so excited
these days, and I'm super excited, and I could not have done this without you. So I am very grateful as well.
Thank you. It's a mutual love society over here, y'all.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining, and I will post all the links so that you can get a hold of Dr. Andrea Pennington's amazing book, The Orgasm Prescription, and become part of the Real Self-Love movement. And I look forward to seeing you next Thursday. Thank you.
Bye.